My name is Jonathon Skavroneck, and I'm joined by Ellie Robson, who's running for AU President. Ellie, thank you for being with me today.
Hi, thank you for talking to me.
Now, can you just give us a little bit of an introduction about yourself?
Absolutely. So I'm in my fourth year here studying history and IR, but sport has been a really big part of my time here, which is why I'm so interested in running for AU President.
What exactly have you done involving sport?
So right from when I started in Freshers Week, I came to the Give It a Go for cheerleading, and I was absolutely hooked on the Saint Sport community, but also on my sport. And since then, I ran for treasurer in my second year, publicity officer, and then now I'm president for cheerleading. So I've had a really deep involvement with both the cheerleading club, but also with the execs and with the Department of Sport as well.
Have you been involved much outside of the Athletic Union?
Of course, so I've also auditioned for plays. I'm involved with a consultancy group which operates at the university, but I'm just kind of active around campus, coming to the events and things like that.
So explain to us why you feel you're qualified to be AU President.
I think my time at St Andrews has really been improved, and my experience I'm going to remember because of the sports and because of that involvement. But also on top of that, I come from a small club. I've seen my club develop, and I think that's something that I can share and I can help other clubs to do. I've got the experience in the administrative side from my own club, and I've learned a lot in that role and from those that came before me. But also I think as well, I'm very engaged with the current president and our previous presidents, and I want to see Saint Sport grow and improve over the years. And I think that's something that I personally am so passionate about doing that I'm ready to do.
So how many members does cheerleading have?
Competitively, we have a team of 31 we started out with, but due to injury it's gone down slightly. But on top of that, we have about 20 recreational members, some social members, so a club of about 50, 60, depending on the day.
So describe to us what exactly your job as president of that organization entails.
Really, I'm in charge of the management of my club, of ensuring our development, but also making sure that we're being represented with the Athletics Union, seeing for the bettering of us, and engaging with the Saint Sport community. We got to take part in varsity this year, which was a great chance to really showcase our sport at Murrayfield with the rugby players, but also to get behind the other teams. But as president as well, it's a lot of admin, timekeeping, checking everyone, line managing for my committee below me, and just staying passionate about my sport as well.
We're going to talk about your manifesto in a minute, but just give us your quick pitch about why you should be AU President. What do you bring to the table?
I think I should be AU President because not only do I have the dedication and the determination to improve Saint Sport, but also I want to see Saint Sport develop not just for the big performance sports, though they are very important to maintain, but also for the smaller clubs, getting everyone on a level playing field so that everyone has the chance to take part in sport and really gain from that experience.
So the first point in your platform is about the accessibility of sports at St Andrews. Can you speak a little bit to that?
Of course. So sport at St Andrews is a huge part of the community, but it can get expensive. It costs £132 just to buy your membership to the Athletics Union to be able to use the facilities, or if you just want to join a club, it's £55. So that's an initial cost just to have the option to be involved. And then clubs as well, you have to pay memberships. There's a lot of costs for clubs to be able to compete and to engage, but that can mean that it's a bit inaccessible for some students. It's a financial burden to take on. I know personally I have had to pay hundreds of pounds per year just to compete, and that's not affordable for all students, but all students should have access to sport. So personally, I think that one of the most important things is putting together an access fund, working with the Director of Sport to pull together some funds to allow students who might be in a financial situation that doesn't allow them to engage with sport to get involved and to compete. And maybe even for those wanting to engage at a higher level whose club isn't recognised as a performance sport, but are high-performing athletes looking to join Team Scotland and things like that.
So how would you make these determinations about who is eligible for this fund and who isn't?
Of course, it's definitely something that has to be dealt with sensitively, and I think it will definitely have to engage not just the AU executives but also the Department of Sport, working with the bursary and things like this. It's not my call to make who gets money, but I think certainly there are ways to recognise if students want to come forward themselves, or again with the flags that are recognised when people are applying for other bursaries, that this might be something we can offer to them.
Okay, and you also are passionate about strengthening the community surrounding St. Sport. Talk a little bit about that passion.
Of course. So varsity this year was a huge success, with so many teams being involved and culminating in the varsity match with the rugby at Murrayfield Stadium. And as well, we've started up the Wednesday night light games, recognising high levels of sport in the Bucks competitions. But I think there's even more we can do to build on that sense of community. Sports teams don't really communicate to each other out with things like socials. And I think that showcasing the variety of sports is only of benefit. It recognises to the student body all the teams that we have and all the sports that are available. So I would really advocate for having the opportunity for showcase events for maybe smaller niche clubs to come together, maybe a martial arts event for different martial arts teams to showcase, inviting halls to come, inviting the clubs to come, inviting the execs to come, so that we see and we recognise, but we also build in that sense of community. We're engaging with each other rather than just seeing our sport and our way forwards.
And that speaks a little bit to how you want to develop sports clubs in the university, both larger ones and smaller up-and-coming clubs.
Yeah.
So what is your plan to differentiate between those two, and what kind of help will you provide each one?
So at the moment, we have 12 performance sports, but there's over 60 clubs and teams that compete for the university that aren't represented there. At the moment as well, there's a bit of a divide between performance sports and the kind of the rest. And even then it's stratified by size of club and things like this. So I really want to engage with those teams that compete at Bucks and are larger and have those performances, because they have the experience of growth, they have the history, and there's a lot we can learn from them. But also recognising that there are difficulties that face smaller clubs beyond the transport and kit issues that face all clubs. And so working together, highlighting the need for a pre-season to be available for everyone. Last year it was kind of only offered to performance sports, and that really hindered. A lot of teams had to advocate for themselves to have these opportunities, and I think that's invaluable. You get to train your members to train the new members to come in. So definitely recognising this, but also in terms of club development as well. Personally, I want to attend as many matches as possible, as well as practices. Drop into practices, check in with the members, see how clubs are doing, as well as hosting a monthly meeting slot for clubs if they want to come to me with updates, with issues. As well, the sabbatical officers will all 6 of them will have a desk in the office next year. So meeting in the union, offering an office hour for any athlete or club to come along and just chat to me, whether it's to update me on scores, a new idea that they have, or just to share their love of St. Sport. There's a lot to say for growing the clubs, and St. Sport definitely is growing substantially over the years. But I think making sure that smaller clubs aren't left behind, whilst ensuring that the larger clubs still feel supported and that they're not having anything taken away from them that they've worked so hard to have.
So are you seeking then to build up all the smaller clubs into that larger realm and increase the number of performance sports offered at St. Andrews?
I think there's definitely potential. Of course, at the moment, it's not entirely clear to clubs how they can become performance sports, and that's something that the president, as well as the entire AU and Department of Sport, should be advocating for. But definitely, it's going to take a while for all sports to be at that level. But in order to be competitive with other universities and maintain our reputation, we definitely have to be looking out for those smaller clubs that are coming through.
And you mentioned before that kit and transportation issues affect all members of the Athletic Union. Mm-hmm. Can you speak a little bit about what you'll do to solve transportation issues?
Of course. So this year Ben has successfully campaigned for more money, and they're buying new vans, which will hopefully alleviate a little bit of the issue. But our transport office are doing really well with trying to recognise the needs, But there shouldn't be a situation where the sailing club or the canoe club don't have the ability to tow their equipment. There shouldn't be the space that there isn't equipment. It is expensive for clubs to travel, but I think working in partnership with local businesses, maybe even through sponsorship, to work with local coach companies to sponsor our teams to their events, potentially even combining teams so that no athlete is having the difficulty of driving 6 or 8 hours to competition themselves, but working together. A lot of the time, clubs are going to the same place. You know, the events are hosted in Glasgow or Edinburgh, and teams can travel together to those events and then travel back, and which would in turn build on that sense of community, I really think.
Now, there's been a lot of talk this year about issues with kit being delayed or even not delivered. How will you work with the existing athletic union contracts in order to make sure our teams have what they need when they need it?
Of course, there shouldn't be a situation where a team don't have their playing kit. That's not acceptable, and we need to hold our kit providers to account for this. I think Lauren Moss, our new representative from Player Layer, will do a good job. She's coming into the role new from our previous representative, but there is that sense of continuity. This will be our 3rd year working with Player Layer, and I think now they're really getting a feel for what our university need and expect. But again, if kit is arriving late, there should be consequences. If it's not turning up to standard, there should be consequences. If not, in terms of remuneration, at least with future promises and with potential to have it in the future.
Okay, so another element of your manifesto is increased representation. You spoke about it a little bit before, but how will you represent every person in the AU, from presidents of performance sports all the way down to a casual member? I
think by engaging with the sports teams, by attending their training sessions, dropping into recreational sessions, and encouraging the executives of the Athletics Union to come along and try out sports, I think that would make a huge difference, because it's only through speaking to all members at all levels that you really understand not only the issues but also the benefits that people are getting from Saints sport, not only on a personal level but also for their well-being. On top of this as well, hosting a weekly office hour, even if people aren't regularly attending, it's an open space. It bridges that gap. It makes it a bit more personable. You're just going to chat to someone about your interests and your topics. And I think as well, being seen around university, being recognised as a SAB and engaging with the other Students' Association sabbatical officers will make a big difference. If you're attending events and you're engaging, students know who you are and they're less afraid to come up and approach you and bring forward their interests in Saints sport.
So this speaks a little bit about the last element of your manifesto, which is transparency. How do you plan to increase transparency, and why do you think it needs more exposition? Of course,
so especially this links back to development and access and community of Saints sport, because if you don't know what's going on, how can you get involved? And at the same time, if you don't know how to improve, how are you going to improve? At the moment, the club management portal isn't fully up to date and doesn't provide information, and I think that needs a big overhaul, uploading information about how to develop, setting up meetings, the categories of performance sport and how they are recognised, really allowing clubs to look forwards, but also making clear how money is being spent at the Athletics Union, so it doesn't feel, for clubs that might believe they're being underrepresented, that the information isn't out there, that they can't see it. I think if things are more transparent about how even the smallest thing, like how sinners tickets are allocated, clubs will feel more comfortable. It bridges that sense of kind of that gap between the Athletics Union and the Department of Sport and the clubs and the individual athletes, right down to the recreational members or even those engaging in hall sport. I think that makes a big difference, being transparent.
So you mentioned sinners tickets. Are you going to open up that process?
I think at the moment it's based on the size of your club and your membership, how many sinners tickets are allocated. And I think that whilst that is helpful to ensure that the clubs do have access to these tickets, it can make it difficult for maybe smaller clubs to have enough tickets, but also for the larger clubs to have tickets. So I think that's something we really need to engage with. But at the same time, Sinners is a great opportunity to engage with other sports and just have some fun after a match, to take part in that sense of community. So I would definitely not look to take away. I want to widen that as much as possible.
How would you address concerns as AU president that the facilities at St. Andrews, both the actual gym and the surrounding area, they're inadequate for the amount of people we have both in the AU and outside of it?
Well, at the moment we're just moving through this huge development of the Athletics Union and the facilities there, and of course it's going to take a while before everyone is satisfied and that everything is covered, but that is something I'm advocating for. When I'm looking for the representation of clubs across the board, I really am wanting everyone to have access and everyone to have that best opportunity. Of course, we are a smaller university, and so our potential to allocate funds might be slightly less than other larger universities, but that doesn't mean that sport is any less important to us or to this university. So whilst of course there are concerns that the facilities are inadequate for them, the sport has grown so much in the last few years. It's only now that we can really catch up with that, and I think the Department of Sport are really looking to the future to develop these, and I certainly as AU president would be looking both long term and short term to alleviate issues, engaging with local communities and the facilities that are available so that no club feels that they're underprovided for in the new development and as well as the redevelopment goes on.
So we've talked a lot about issues that directly affect members of sports clubs. Mm-hmm. How will you help students, the roughly 4,000 students that are outside of the athletic union, that use the gym casually or that sometimes engage but not really?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of potential for engaging, especially with those who don't want to necessarily participate in sport but want to be spectators, who still love sport, especially with the large-scale events like Varsity, like the Wednesday Night Lights, and hopefully with the showcases. I think as well, offering Give It A Go sessions. We already offer one at the start of the year in Freshers Week, but we've introduced one just over the last couple of weeks as a reintroduction, and I think that's really important, having accessible sessions. I think as well, encouraging clubs to host recreational sessions is very important because of course sport and exercise is a huge part of student well-being. In terms of those who want to be more casually involved or who are interested in just using the gym less frequently, I think as well it's a good opportunity to offer maybe induction sessions, really open induction sessions through halls or through societies, inviting them to engage with the sports centre. There's a sense of disconnect, especially with the distance between the sports centre and the Students' Association. And so I think there seems to be that divide between societies and clubs, inviting societies to try out sports. And again, the sports seems to engage with the societies. It helps that wider population engage with sport at St. Andrews, which is so important.
So you've spoken a little bit just about the public measures that the AU has taken to widen its reach into the student body, for instance, Wednesday Night Lights, and obviously the varsity promotion at the beginning of the year. How will you work on that publicity? How will you make sure that students are engaging with those efforts by the AU?
Mm-hmm. We have, of course, the website, the Instagrams and Twitters and Facebooks, and I think, of course, students engage with their social media. That's not to be denied, but there is more we can be doing to represent the clubs, not only through social media, but also maybe talking about it in halls publicly to the university, as well as sharing our developments out with that. We're not, so much is going on in St. Andrews with sport that it doesn't need to be limited just to our local area, but we should be sharing that message wider. So there's definitely opportunity to engage with, if not student publications, even wider publications.
So the current AU initiative of Wednesday Night Lights, it saw some popularity, but it sometimes fell flat. Would you seek to continue attempting to make the AU more like American colleges in that way?
I think there's potential there. It's difficult because, of course, at the start of the year, there's a lot of interest in what's going on, and then deadlines come up, other priorities develop. But I think keeping sport exciting and interesting, maybe engaging with local vendors so that there's food and there's music and there's sport, and we're really involved, inviting clubs specifically. I know that whilst it's mentioned in bulletins and things like this, there's no direct invitation to other sports teams to attend, but also to the wider population of the university to attend. And I think really making events exciting, working with our other sabbatical officers would really help with that. But of course you can't ignore the attention that wants to be there. I think there's definitely a wish from the student population to build on that sense of community and to engage with these events. It's just making sure that people know they're going on.
Now, as AU president, you'll be managing quite a large number of staff and quite a large budget. How do you think your experience will help you in that endeavor?
Well, through my work in my own society, my own club, I've gone through the ranks. I've played multiple roles, so I know how to manage the admin side on a club level. I think scaling that up just endeavours to be more organised, which is definitely something. I'm very organised and very aware of the workload. I think keeping on track of it, but also knowing that whilst you've got a large budget to be on top of, it's just about maintaining communication with those below and line managing effectively so that it doesn't become overwhelming, so that nothing goes unnoticed. Really paying attention to the small things that are being done, as well as the individual work that needs to be done.
And as president, what will be your greatest budget priority that you have control over? What are you going to put the most money towards?
Sorry.
No, it's fine.
As AU president, I think the most important thing is providing support for students, and I think that's where my priorities are. At the moment, clubs have the support for funding, for transport, but that's overspent. But I think providing individuals with access to sport should be the priority. We're already dealing with transport and with kit at the moment, so I think my big priority moving forwards will be the access to sport.
All right, and is there anything else that you want to mention to the voters about yourself, your campaign platform, what you stand for?
Of course. I think at the end of the day, I am the best candidate for this job. I'm dedicated, I'm hardworking, but I'm passionate about Saints sport. I want to see Saints sport have the opportunity to grow, to develop, and really improve the student experience. And this is something I want for all clubs. I want to engage with all levels of sport. And I think that's something that will be really important moving forwards with the development, using our facilities to the best of their ability, but also using the talent that we have here and really recognising that. So I hope everyone goes out and votes. If not for me, at least engaging in the democracy.
All right, well, thank you very much, Ellie. My name is Jonathon Skavroneck for The Saint. Make sure you visit www.thesaint-online.com for more information about the 2017 Students Association elections in our Elections Hub.